The morning sun barely pierced the heavy blinds of Pam Bondi's office, casting long shadows across her desk. As a seasoned attorney, Pam was accustomed to early starts, her days filled with case files, legal briefs, and the relentless pursuit of justice. But today felt different. A small, unmarked USB drive sat on her desk, delivered anonymously to her office with no note, no explanation, just a plastic bag and a sense of unease. She turned it over in her hands, her instincts whispering that this was no ordinary tip. Pam's assistant Richard had brought it to her attention moments ago. "Someone dropped this off for you," he'd said, his voice tinged with curiosity. "No name, no nothing, just this." Pam's pulse quickened. Anonymous tips weren't uncommon in her line of work, but most amounted to dead ends, disgruntled litigants, or wild goose chases. This, however, felt heavier, as though the air itself carried a warning. She thanked Richard, locked her office door, and sat down at her laptop, the USB drive now a tangible weight in her hand. Inserting it into her computer, Pam watched as a single folder appeared on the screen. Westfield cases. The name tugged at her memory. Judge Thomas Westfield, a prominent federal judge in Washington, D.C., known for his influence and impeccable reputation. She'd heard his name in passing, but had never crossed paths with him professionally. Why was his name on this drive? Her finger hovered over the mouse, a moment of hesitation before she clicked the folder open. What greeted her was a cascade of files, PDFs, case summaries, internal court documents, and something labeled Alteration Logs LSX. Her breath caught as she opened the spreadsheet. Rows and columns filled the screen, detailing dates, docket numbers, and changes to court records. Timestamps erased, hearings rescheduled, then deleted. Cases marked as dismissed with no explanation. Worst of all, the changes were traced back to accounts belonging to Judge Westfield and his clerks. This wasn't a clerical error. This was deliberate manipulation, systematic and chilling. Pam's stomach twisted as she scrolled through the documents. Each file confirmed her growing dread. This was no isolated incident. Cases had been wiped from records, evidence buried, outcomes altered, all under Westfield's authority. One file, a correspondence PDF, stopped her cold. An email thread, innocuous at first, ended with a single line that made her heart skip. Case must be closed by Thursday. No trail, no trail. The words echoed in her mind, a directive so precise it could only mean one thing. Someone was orchestrating a cover-up. She leaned back in her chair, the silence of her office amplifying the thud of her pulse. Who had sent this drive? And why her? The questions gnawed at her, but one truth was undeniable. This was a conspiracy, and she was now at its center. Pam knew she couldn't walk away. Whoever had left this drive wanted her to see it, to act on it. But was it a call to uncover the truth, or a trap to ensnare her? The deeper Pam dug, the more sinister the picture became. The files revealed a pattern of corruption spanning months, possibly years. One case stood out. Eric Johnson, a trafficking defendant whose trial Pam had followed a year ago. The evidence against Johnson had been overwhelming. Communications, financial records, witness testimonies. He was facing decades in prison. Yet, according to the files, Johnson had been released on supervised release, only to be arrested again in Florida for assault with a deadly weapon. The release wasn't an oversight. It was a direct result of Westfield's interference, with hearings erased and documents altered to ensure Johnson walked free. Pam's hands trembled as she cross-referenced the data. Dozens of cases bore similar marks: rescheduled hearings, dismissed charges, missing evidence, all linked to Westfield's office. Then she found an email chain buried in the files, sent from an anonymous address. It detailed communications between Westfield's clerk and an external consultancy group, a firm known for lobbying courts on behalf of corporate interests. The emails outlined a scheme to manipulate case outcomes, with the clerk acting as a conduit for Westfield's orders. Pam's mind raced. This wasn't just judicial misconduct. It was a conspiracy to control the courts for personal gain. The weight of her discovery pressed down on her. She needed to move quickly, but caution was paramount. Who could she trust? The consultancy group's involvement suggested powerful players, people who wouldn't hesitate to protect their secrets. Pam called Richard into her office, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "We need to verify everything," she told him. "Cross-reference these documents with public records, discreetly." Richard nodded, sensing the gravity of the task. As he left, Pam's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging. You're in over your head." Her blood ran cold. The message confirmed what she feared. Someone was watching her. The USB wasn't just a tip. It was a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Pam deleted the message, her resolve hardening. She wouldn't back down, not when the truth was within reach. But the stakes had just gotten personal. Over the next few days, Pam and her small team worked in secrecy, piecing together the puzzle. The consultancy group, she learned, had ties to corporate lobbyists and political donors, their influence stretching across multiple sectors. One memo, flagged as confidential, revealed a sealed case involving national security protocols. The case had been buried to protect government contracts with private tech firms, and Westfield had personally overseen its suppression, coordinating with a lobbyist named Victor Grayson. Grayson's name appeared repeatedly, a shadow figure pulling strings behind the scenes. The deeper Pam went, the more dangerous it became. A second letter arrived at her office, this one more direct. "Leave this alone, or there will be consequences." The words were typed in stark black ink. No signature, no return address. Pam's hands shook as she read it, but she refused to let fear take hold. She filed the letter away, evidence of the lengths her adversaries would go to. Her team doubled their efforts, working from secure locations and encrypting all communications. Every new document, every email, painted a clearer picture. Westfield's corruption wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a broader network of influence peddling. Pam knew the next step was inevitable. She had to take this to the Judiciary Committee. The evidence was overwhelming. Altered dockets, email threads, surveillance footage from the courthouse showing Westfield's clerk meeting Grayson in the lobby. The video was brief but damning, a clear violation of judicial ethics. Pam prepared her case meticulously, knowing the committee would be a formidable audience. They were guardians of the judiciary's integrity, but they were also part of the system she was challenging. Would they act, or would they protect one of their own? The day of the hearing arrived, the air thick with tension. Pam walked into the committee room, her briefcase heavy with files. The fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over the proceedings, and the committee members, seasoned legal minds with stern expressions, watched her closely. Westfield sat across from her, his face a mask of composure, though Pam could sense the unease beneath his polished exterior. She began her presentation, laying out the evidence with precision. The altered logs, the erased hearings, the emails with Grayson's firm. The room was silent, the committee members' skepticism palpable. But as Pam unveiled the surveillance footage, their expressions shifted. The video played on a large screen, showing the clerk and Grayson in hushed conversation, their body language furtive. Westfield's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the committee. Pam pressed her advantage, presenting the memo about the sealed national security case. "This is not a mistake," she said, her voice steady. "This is a pattern of corruption, orchestrated by Judge Westfield and his associates to serve outside interests." Westfield erupted, his voice sharp with accusation. "This is a vendetta," he snapped. "Ms. Bondi is twisting facts for her own agenda. This is politics, not justice." The room bristled with tension, but Pam didn't flinch. "This is about the truth," she countered, her gaze locking with his. "The evidence speaks for itself." She played her final card, a financial trail linking Grayson's firm to payments made to accounts tied to Westfield's clerks. The committee members exchanged glances, their skepticism giving way to concern. As the hearing drew to a close, Westfield's bravado crumbled. He offered a weak defense, claiming the alterations were clerical errors, but his words rang hollow. The committee chair, a grizzled veteran known for his impartiality, leaned forward. "Judge Westfield, you've seen the evidence. Do you have anything to say?" Westfield stammered, his voice faltering. I never intended to manipulate anything." Pam cut in, her tone resolute. "You were complicit, and now you must be held accountable." The committee adjourned to deliberate, leaving Pam in a state of cautious hope. She had done everything she could, but the system's response remained uncertain. As she left the room, her phone buzzed with another message. "You're too late. This goes deeper than you think." The words sent a chill down her spine, a reminder that the fight was far from over. In the days that followed, the case began to break into the public sphere. News outlets picked up the story, and whispers of Westfield's corruption spread through legal circles. Pam's office became a hub of activity, her team fielding calls from journalists and colleagues. But the threats didn't stop. A third letter arrived. This one slipped under her office door. "You'll regret this." Pam's heart raced, but she refused to be cowed. She contacted trusted journalists, sharing redacted copies of the evidence to ensure the story couldn't be buried. One evening, while reviewing files in a secure location, Pam uncovered a new lead. A second memo, this one outlining a network of judges and lobbyists working in tandem to influence legal reforms. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering, reaching into the highest echelons of power. Pam knew going public was her only option, but it would come at a cost. In a tense meeting with her team, she laid out the plan. "We expose this," she said, "but we need to be ready for the backlash." As they prepared for the public release, Pam received a final call. The voice was cold, emotionless. "You think you can expose us? You're making a big mistake." The line went dead. Pam's resolve only strengthened. She wasn't just fighting for justice in a single case. She was fighting to dismantle a system that had betrayed the public trust. The story broke like a tidal wave, dominating headlines and sparking outrage. Pam's evidence, carefully curated and verified, painted a damning picture of systemic corruption. Protests erupted outside courthouses, and calls for reform echoed across the nation. But Pam knew the true battle was just beginning. The anonymous messages, the threats, the shadowy figures behind Westfield, they were all part of a larger web, one she was only beginning to unravel. As she sat in her office, staring at the latest anonymous message, Pam felt the weight of her mission. The truth had been exposed, but the cost was steep. Colleagues warned her to tread carefully, and her family begged her to step back. Yet Pam couldn't stop. The system had failed too many, and she had the power to make a difference. With every new lead, every uncovered document, she grew more determined. The reckoning had begun, and Pam Bondi was ready for whatever came next.